This is Travis Green, and things starting to heat up a little bit here.
Pleased to be joined by former head coach of the Vancouver Canucks, spent a little bit of time in New Jersey, now coaching the Ottawa Senators, Travis Green. Travis, thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate it.
Awesome to be here, bud.
So many things I want to get into you with when it comes to your career and your path, and obviously life, and the mental health part of the show is definitely something I want to touch on first. But start off with back coaching in a Canadian market.
Yeah.
What's that like?
It's funny, I just got asked the same thing. I think, first of all, playing in the NHL is a privilege. Coaching in the NHL is a privilege as well. So I don't look at it, I look at it like a good thing. That to coach or to play in a Canadian city is, I think it's an even higher privilege, I guess, is a good way of putting it. People are so passionate in Canada about hockey. It's really our country's sport that everyone loves. And just to be in a city or a market where everyone wants the hometown team to win, they're invested in it emotionally. They wait for the games. When you lose, they're upset. When they win, they're excited. And I think that's, you can't ask for anything more.
I don't want to say this, I say it with the utmost respect, but the Ottawa Senators, and kind of like the Winnipeg Jets, I don't want to say they're forgotten of the Canadian teams, but it doesn't feel like that in that market, does it?
Yeah, it's not when you're talking about markets and market size, it's, they're not the same size as Vancouver, Toronto. Montreal's been such a storied organization and around so long that, Ottawa and Winnipeg are smaller cities, close-knit communities. I've really, before I got to Ottawa, I didn't know a whole lot about it other than going in and out, but I've grown to really love the area and the city and the community.
Your team playing well, obviously getting goaltending, and it's a young group as well. When you look at it, so many young guys, but a lot of stars on that lineup. So for you, going into that situation, your younger team, obviously in Vancouver, there's a lot of veterans. Young team in Jersey, your associate there, and then you get the interim tag. But now, what were those meetings like before you took the job over?
Yeah, I think there's a long process. I talk about being process-driven a lot, building relationships, communication. And really, I just started from the ground floor with our group. I think first dialogues were just really to get to know them a little bit as people, for them to get to know me, start to build that type of relationship. Then gradually built into their thoughts and ideas on the team. My thoughts and ideas after watching, and then take it a step further. How can each guy be better to help our team progress to where they all wanted to go? And I really enjoyed that process over the off season with this group of players. Because they're very hungry to win, and B, they're really open to being coached. As I've said it publicly, I've said it to them, as badly as they want to win, and they haven't had success, they're part of the reason why they haven't had success as well. And there's no magic, person that's going to come in and change it. They've got to take responsibility, and they've got to become better players individually for our team to grow, and they have to grow. And really, to a man, every player was very open to those type of discussions on how they could help the team be better, and which really meant how could they become better players. And I've seen a lot of growth in a lot of guys.
How much has coaching changed? December 2021, you're done in Vancouver, and then back June 2023 with another job. So let me start with, how much reflection time did you take, and what did you learn about yourself in that period?
Yeah, I've been asked that question a lot. Mm-hmm. I think when you're, no one wants to get fired. I'd never been fired before. I loved working for the Vancouver Canucks. I took it to heart. Coaches grind, and they grind hard. And it felt like I had lived 10 years and 5 years, almost 5 years in Vancouver in ways, and a lot of good moments. Got a lot of good memories, a lot of great memories. Some harder times, obviously, when you get fired, things aren't going well. And we talked earlier about pressure in a Canadian city, and it does wear on coaches. And you feel it, you know your team feels it. And once I got let go, I didn't know how badly I probably needed a little break than I did once it happened. And it took probably a month, 6 weeks before I started feeling, I guess, normal or better. And then I kind of just took some time and got away from hockey a little bit, and it was nice. Got rejuvenized, re-energized, started to watch a lot of hockey again, started to study the game again, study different teams, different style of play. And, when you love something and you miss it and you have passion for the game, then I started to really miss it, being around it again, and was really looking forward to another opportunity and was thankful that I got one.
You mentioned the learning to love the game again. I think it's the same with anything. If you've lost a job or anything like that and something that you really love, that it's kind of taken away from you. You feel like, your livelihood and something that you really love has been taken away from you. How long, you mentioned like 6 weeks, but did you have to learn to love the game again? Like, were you angry?
No, I mean, I don't know if I was ever angry.
Yeah.
I don't think I was. I think you go into this job knowing that, it's a high turnover rate.
100%.
And, I think I was disappointed. I was upset. I was, mad at myself a little bit. Like anything, I think I talk to our players a lot about self-assessment and reliving a lot of things that maybe you could do different. But no, not angry. That's. I'm a big believer in looking ahead and not looking back. Also, but the time off helped me for sure. How just, physically to just become healthier. Not having the stress. Probably learning. You asked me earlier, what did you learn? You learn a lot when you're on the job. You learn a lot when you're having success. You learn a lot when you're going through hard times. And one of the things I probably learned is how to handle the stress a little better and to keep myself energized in certain ways to be better for our players.
You've got a pretty big family. You've got a daughter. You've got 2 sons.
Yeah.
No secret, Brody obviously has autism. I'm not going to get too much into that, but I want to ask you, in that time off that you had, how nice was it to be back and be able to be with your family in California and see how much have you learned or can you learn from Brody?
Man, I feel like I just actually talked about him yesterday. Having Brody has brought many joys to my life that I never knew existed, and just a picture of him. Sherry sent me a picture yesterday, just him smiling, and it was someone friends had given him a gift, and it was the simplest. I think it was a chocolate bar, and I don't know if he ever has a bad day. He's probably a guy that could have many bad days, and he's happy a lot, and that's for me. I learned from him as far as life is good.
Yeah.
We should. Sometimes we get wrapped up in things, and you forget how precious everything is, and I do that. I'm guilty of that a lot. I when I'm working, I'm all in, and you forget sometimes that there's other things in life that matter, and I'm still learning.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all
are
still learning, and no matter what we do. How much of that, and you mentioned the still learning, do you take into your coaching, and how much has coaching changed with kind of the way that you have to present information? The younger generation of the NHL did a commercial about Generation Z and all these young players. So what's it like for you? I mean, you're an old school guy, right? I mean, the way you play the game.
I'm an old school person, hockey guy in ways, but I still feel like I'm very young at heart, and have. My kids are at that age where I'm around them. I'm around these guys a lot. I feel a lot younger than sometimes I am. And, how I coach is, I talk about being process driven. I think you have to with today's generation. I talk about intensity, being intense, but also having passion, And that passion can come out in different ways. And I think an important part of coaching is care and caring about your players. And much like you care about your kids. I think that's one of the biggest elements in coaching is if the players know that you care, that you want the best for them, I think you can coach them, maybe firmer at certain times, but I'm not afraid to coach with a little bit of joking now and then. I can be sarcastic, I can joke around, I can be hard, but I think that's just, trying to be yourself. But you do have to adjust with today's generation for sure. It's not like when I was playing, and I think coaches have changed a lot. I think society has changed a lot with over the last 20 years. So I'm trying to always kind of have a plan as how I'm going to coach today's player. And, I think you really have to put a lot of thought into it. And each individual, too, as well.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, you manage expectations, you manage personalities.
Yeah.
And in some cases, for different teams and different people, it's egos, right?
Yeah, no, it is. And I think if you don't really think about each player, how coaching affects each player, you're probably not going to get the best out of them. I know there's certain guys, I've only been with Ottawa now 30 games, but I do know that there's certain guys that I have to coach a little bit, call it with a little more love than other players. And I think that's society also, that your words can affect people differently. You can say one thing one way to a person, and he's very fine with it. You can say the exact same thing, same tone to someone else, and it might put them in a tailspin for a while. And I think you have to be, conscious of that.
We've seen players take leaves of absence for personal
Right.
reasons. We've seen mental health obviously become a huge proponent in the NHL and what different teams are doing with hockey talks and that sort of thing. How much do you and your coaching staff take into consideration if a player's not having a good day, whether it's on the ice or off the ice and things like that? And how much do you talk to your guys when it comes to stuff like that?
Do we talk about mental health a lot daily? No.
Yeah.
But do we take it into consideration where a person is at? Yes. There's times where you might be upset with a player and how he's playing, but maybe you can tell that he already knows it, and you are only adding to the burden, to the stress, is something that you really have to pay attention, because ultimately we're trying to get our players to play the best that they can. And sometimes it's a heavier thumb, sometimes it's lighter, and that's a big art of coaching, I think.
Do you enjoy that part of it now? Like the relationship and stuff. Like, look, when you were here, Daniel Henrik-Sedin, they're veterans. They played forever, and now you've got Tim Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, this younger generation of guys. And Brady's your leader, and he's at such a young age.
I enjoy it a lot, but I also enjoy coaching Giroux, Claude Giroux. Like he wants to be coached hard, and the Twins wanted to be coached hard too. Like they didn't want to just be, hey, we're the Twins, just let us be. They wanted to be coached, and I think every player really wants to be coached and doesn't, and there's every coach has his own style. It's hard for me to even explain my style, but I know how I try to coach. I try to coach each guy a little bit differently as they are. They're all different. They're all different talent levels. They all have different contracts. They're at different stages of their life. And, I think that's also the part that I do enjoy the most, is that it's not the same. The job here in Ottawa is a lot different than the job was in Vancouver. The players are different. I enjoyed coaching the players in Vancouver as well. And, but hopefully over time you get better with whatever you do. And I would hope that I'm a better coach today than I was then.
How do you manage expectations versus personal goals of whether it's yourself, whether it's one of the members of your coaching staff, whether it's your GM or your owner? I mean, obviously a new owner, but how do you manage those types of expectations? Because in the end, the players are going to go and play. You're going to have to answer the questions about that from your GM, and he's going to have to answer from his boss. So those type of expectations.
Well, I'm also, players want to do well individually.
Yeah.
And that's the nature of the beast. That's being competitive. That's all these guys have at one point in time been probably, the best player on their team, and they're used to doing great things. And, so I feel fortunate that I got to play a long time, and I know that feeling. I also know that I didn't like the player I was the first 6-7 years of my career compared to the player I was at the end of my career. And I don't talk about it a lot with my players, but there's the odd player that I will pull in and just say, hey, like, if all you care about is winning, you're going to be a really good player, and you're also going to do really well individually. Mm-hmm. And I think winning teams have that. They have high expectations of themselves, but those expectations are all driven toward how do I help the team win. And young players that are really, really skilled and are used to getting a lot of points, sometimes that takes a little time to drive in, for them to really realize, hey, maybe I get 15 less points this season, but we are a lot better team. And I think you've seen that no matter how much the game changes, gets faster, bigger, smaller, whatever, there's always examples of star players that have maybe grasped certain areas of the game better in order for their team to win championships. And you can go back to Steve Yzerman. There was lots of talk about that. Sid, when he first came in the league, to the player he is. I think you're seeing it a little bit with Connor in Edmonton, and I think the list is long when it comes to young star players that their game slowly evolves into games that you can win with.
Who were some of your coaching inspirations or people that you looked up to? And even now, do you look up to guys, and are you having relationships with guys? I know you're friends with other coaches in the league. Do you guys bounce ideas off each other and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's ultra competitive league.
Of course.
So I go back to certain coaches that I guess meant a lot to me, and I learned a lot of things from. Butch Goring, I was fortunate to have in junior. I had him in the American Hockey League. He really helped me out a lot. Pat Quinn, Al Arbor. I learned a lot looking back. I don't know if I learned it so much at the time, but I think you take a little bit and you try to add to what you know already. And even at the end of my career, Paul Maurice, at the very end of my career, was a guy that I was trying to decide what to do. And I remember the day Paul called me in and said, like, hey, I've told 2 other guys this. I think you should get into coaching. I think you'd be a good coach. And the other 2 were actually Rod Brindamore and Ray Whitney. And obviously Rod's had a great coaching career, and Whit didn't quite get into coaching, but he would have been a good coach as well. And I really took that to heart. And I have a lot of buddies that I talk to hockey about. Obviously, Talk is a guy that we talk a lot. I played with Mike Sullivan and had him as a coach. I keep in touch with Sully a little bit, but once the season starts, you're not so talkative when it comes to sharing information. But I think guys that love hockey, they love talking hockey all the time.
You mentioned something that's interesting there with coaching, because you said that maybe someone said something to you, but you didn't really grasp it until you got older.
Yeah.
Do you think that you can have that effect, or is that something that you hope that you can have on certain players?
Yeah. You know what? You hope that you can help people.
Yeah.
I tell a story about Al Arbor, who, Al was a real presence. Like, he had a deep bark, a deep voice. When he walked in the room, you were on your toes, and he could bark with the best of them. But there was, Al, the best thing Al probably taught me was empathy and care. And I remember it vividly. I was a rookie, and we had lost 4-2. I was -4. It was against Bruins back when they had Neely, Oates, Bork, and I was our checking centerman. We were trying to make the playoffs, and I was convinced I was getting sent to the minors after this game. Like, it 5 minutes after the game, 10 minutes, I'm still in my skates, and Al is standing in front of me, which it never happens. And in my head, I'm like, man, I'm setting a record for how fast I'm getting sent to the minors. I'm not even out of my gear. And he really opened up. He just sat down beside me and said, "Hey, kid, like those are Hall of Fame players. They're going to have big nights like that, and that's going to happen to you again. And for our team right now, I need you to get some sleep tonight so you can practice tomorrow. And you got Mario coming in on Saturday, and we need you." And at the time, I didn't really think about it. And then as I got older, that could have really determined my whole career and never played if he didn't come in and help me out a little bit through that moment. And I think, hopefully along the way I pass on something like that to someone else.
The NHL is, you mentioned it's ultra competitive league, but it's hard as hell to make the NHL.
Yeah.
But it's even harder to stay in the league. So when you're talking to guys and you have guys that come up from the American Hockey League, especially on your team, what's your message to them?
It's hard. I mean, the hardest thing personally, I don't like telling guys that they're not playing.
Yeah.
And that's not something I take joy in. And, and it's not easy because you're disappointing someone. It's their dream to play in the NHL, and it's hard. And sometimes, for me, the best way is just being honest. And when you send a guy down, hey, it's a fine line between being here and not, and stick with it. I had a player once in the minors. I won't say his name, but he was an unbelievable person. We had him on a PTO in Utica, and I loved him. Liked him. I think he played 5 to 10 games for us, and we had to let him go. And he comes in, and I said, "Hey, I got to let you go," because in the minors, you don't have a lot of choices sometimes. And he said to me, "Well, why? I'm playing really good." I said, "I know, I get it. I know you are." And he said, "You got any advice for me?" And I said, "Yeah, I think you should retire." And he looked at me, and actually I remember Palmer was in the room, and I looked at him, I said, I think you should retire because this is what I see of your future. You're going to try to get back to the American League. You're going to try to get to the NHL.
Yeah. You
are going to scratch and claw for 5 more years, and you're a great person, I can tell. And you're going to do great things in life, but I think you should get on with doing those great things because I don't think you're going to play in the NHL. But I said it in a way that I hoped would help him.
Empathy.
Yeah, and he didn't like it at the time, but he ended up calling me a year and a half later and thanking me. And he's doing great things now in his life in a different, different job, but his name just came up the other day when we were talking, and those kind of things make you feel good.
So 1, you were right, but 2, enjoyed having that phone call. Obviously, it's a good thing for you.
No, yeah, it was. It was, and you don't like telling players that, hey, but I felt like he was a real smart guy too, and I just saw his future for him, but also saw something else in him that I thought he'd do great things and have a really good life.
What's changed most in the league for you since your time when you were a head coach to going to be the associate, then the interim, and now back to being a head coach? Like, what in those 3 or 4 years do you think has been the biggest change in the National Hockey League?
Oh, man, that is hard. That's not an easy question. I think the parity in the league right now is man, I think that's probably the biggest thing. Like, you have to be on your game every night if you want to win. I don't know if I've ever seen goaltending be such a major deal in the NHL. Like, the teams are so close. It's razor thin from one night. One team's 100% game is usually going to win, but if you're at 80 and the other team's at 85, it's close. And I just think the parity in the league right now, I don't think it's switched as far as, the players are still the same. I haven't been out of the league that long, so I haven't seen a big change there. But just the parity in the league, it's teams near the bottom of the standings they have a good chance to win every night too.
Feel like that brings more pressure, not only to you but to your players and things like that, because you mentioned parity, and on any given night, like if you're 90% and another team you mentioned is 100, they're probably going to win that game. So it's the execution, it's the preparation, and you mentioned the process 3 or 4 times in this interview, but it's all of it.
It is for me. It's it's sticking with it, sticking with the grind, like not letting your guard down as a player or a coach, and because you can't have too many off nights, but you're still, that you're going to, you're not going to be on your game all the time, and I think as a coaching staff goes, we put a lot of thought. Okay, how are we going to be ready to play tomorrow? What's the best thing for them to be ready to play tomorrow? And really putting a lot of thought in that, and not just taking it for granted. Hey, we got to practice today. But like, you can't be at 80% and win now very often.
There's a couple more. Do you enjoy practice? Like, do you enjoy that part of it? I think that so much is made of, these guys play 82 games. There's obviously a long training camp, a long preseason. How much of the practice is actually getting guys on the ice, but it's the messaging before. It's the video and it's all that work.
I enjoy the message. I enjoy the part of how are you going to get the group to play their best.
Yeah.
Do people love practicing? I don't know anyone that just loves I like the games much like when I played. I like the games a lot better than the practices.
Goalies don't like practices.
No. But I like the preparation leading up and the mental side of it of how can you get your team to their top level, whether it's through practice or through communication, and I think that's also separates coaches.
I feel like the evolution of being a good communicator is now one of the biggest things for coaches, as opposed to just knowing the game, been around the game, won Stanley Cups, played the game.
Yeah, motivate.
Communication's got to be number one.
How do you motivate people? How do you bring the best out of them? And again, that comes in so many different ways because every player is different,
Okay, one last one for me.
All right.
We're going to show it. Do you remember your first goal in the National Hockey League?
I do. I actually was just talking about it yesterday.
You were prepped for this interview. You were talking about everything we talked about.
It's funny. Elfie and I were walking into Calgary, and I think Ben was with us too. Sexy was with us, and just talking about the new building going in, and had a lot of fond memories of that game. And I believe it was David Volek who passed it out to me, and I backhanded a shot in, I think, against Mike Vernon. But I don't remember. I didn't score a whole lot of goals, but I don't remember many of them. That's one that I do, though. You never forget your first.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for this, Travis.
All right,
I appreciate
man.
the time.
Fun. Awesome.
And good luck the rest of the way.
Yeah, thanks, sir.